period of the investigation is from 2020 to 2024. That's right, 2020 to 2024. And this involved 13 industrial units, 13 companies, meaning industrial units, quarries, mines, and companies operating in construction and public works. We took a sample of 13, and all 13 were at fault. We realized this because we had to wrap up the investigation, but it is continuing with other companies. All 13 were in violation of the legislation. The prices were not being respected. So what does that mean? When we talk about subsidized fuel prices, it means they are being used by companies that are not entitled to them. This means that hydrocarbons in Burkina Faso are a monopoly exclusively reserved for Sonabi. The state chose this monopoly in order to have better control. That's why Sonabi manages the inflow and outflow of fuel stocks. Alongside these inflows and outflows, the Burkina state subsidizes the product for household consumption. That is to say, the hydrocarbons we consume at the station are products subsidized by the state for households, for the population. However, there is a category of products still managed by Sonabi that is not covered by the subsidy. There is a category of products that is not subsidized, but which is also handled by Sonabi. When it is subsidized, it is intended for households, which is what we find at the stations. Total stations, Excel, Otam, all kinds of stations that we have across the country. The product found there is a subsidized product. Now, the marketers are the ones who have the monopoly on collecting this product from Sonabi. When we talk about marketers, we're referring to Total, Shell, Vigo, Energy. I can't remember them all, but in any case, Otam, and so on. The stations themselves are the marketers, and it is these marketers who handle the collection of the product. When they go to Sonabi to get their supplies, they must stock up either on subsidized products. Sonabi will sell to them because there is a subsidized price. At Sonabi, when the product is subsidized, let's just take diesel as an example. When it's subsidized, the product bought at 613 francs at Sonabi. Okay? When the product is subsidized, it is sold at 613 francs at Sonabi. When the product is not subsidized, still diesel, it is sold at 1,100, 1,100, and 81,150. It is sold at 1,150 when it is not subsidized in diesel. So there are two selling prices at Sonabi, and when it is subsidized, the product must end up at the stations for household consumption. When it is not subsidized, it should be found in quarries, mines, construction, and public works, and industrial units, because these are profit-driven companies seeking to make profit. So there is a price for them. They cannot consume the subsidized product. Unfortunately, marketers, when they go to Sonabi to collect these products, when they have an order and need to deliver to a company operating in construction and public works, to an industrial unit, a quarry, a mine, etc. Instead of telling Sonabi, we want non-subsidized fuel, they take subsidized fuel to resell to these units, because these units buy at a different price than the price that is sold to the bank that you and I buy at. This is done to increase their profit margins. So in short, that's the practice. Okay? Now, the responsibility of Sonabi here, Sonabi is not held responsible because the parties involved show up at Sonabi and their good faith is assumed. Sonabi does not have the means to track them when they refuel or where they are supposed to deliver. We trust them until they trust us. When they come, they say they want fuel to supply their station. Since industrial units and construction companies cannot go directly to Sonabi to refuel. They always have to go through these marketers. And so these marketers act cunningly. They take fuel that they are supposed to deliver to industrial units, making Sonabi believe that the fuel is actually intended for consumption at the station. They buy it at a subsidized price. Sonabi is not held responsible. It sells its products. Now, the control units have to step in afterwards. That's what they are doing right now. In terms of scale, obviously, there are only 13 industrial units in total across all categories, whether it's construction or mining. We extended the control to a level of 13. And in 4 years, more than 7 billion have come out. 7 billion is the subsidy that the state has borne, whereas in reality, it shouldn't be borne by the state. And these companies that benefited from this product have unfairly made a profit. So you can imagine what the state pays in subsidies when there isn't strict oversight. And obviously, the state is forced to spend money to cover a cost that shouldn't even exist. In other words, if the state didn't have to bear this, it could address other needs, such as building schools, roads, hospitals, and so on. So it's really a practice that seriously harms the country's economy and development. The responsibility of, I think I've answered, the culprits you see are really the companies, the champions of trickery. Normally, we shouldn't name or single them out. Normally here, because the procedure takes place in court, those who can settle the matter through a transactional approach, particularly by returning what was taken and paying the fines and penalties owed, the case will proceed for those who do not wish to settle through a transaction. So we could end up in court in order to resolve the matter. So at this stage, it's not really appropriate to mention the names of the companies involved. But generally speaking, since we started this inspection, we have not yet come across a single industrial unit that complies with the price structure in other cases. That we can guarantee you. At the very least, if we had a good example, we would be very comfortable naming them. But so far, we are not able to do so. So the investigation is ongoing. Certainly, we will discover more as we go along. But at this stage, we still don't have a good example.
Set another set of the news in Burkina Faso.